can say the partnership. Without partnership, we cannot realize several things. For example, the Climate Social Forum will not be possible if there weren't partnership. And for doing partnership, we need the dialogue. We need the dialogue. And properly regarding dialogue, I want to introduce the first speaker and keynote speaker of today, that is Sevuloni Ratu. Hi, Sevuloni, welcome. And I'm very honored to have Sevuloni today here, because as you always know, the Climate Social Forum is very based on the TALANOA dialogue. But the TALANOA dialogue was born from the Fiji culture. And for that, I leave the floor to Sevuloni Ratu to introduce himself and to tell us about the TALANOA dialogue. Hi, Sevuloni.
I'm not too sure what to say. That's a good, very good evening, and also a very good morning from Fiji, Dominic and colleagues. Once again, it's thank you, and it's again for the opportunity and for the invitation, and again, it's really good to join today for this session. And as you mentioned, Dominic, to share with the colleagues that about the TALANOA dialogue, as you mentioned, the TALANOA is used in different forms, particularly in the Fijian context. So what TALANOA means is usually it could be a dialogue. That could be a best way that it could be defined. So it could be a dialogue. It could be a conversation. It could be between two persons, two parties, but also it could be a collective dialogue. For example, it could be more than two people. It could consist of a group where people are having conversation, where people are having dialogue. And then at the end of the TALANOA, or at the end of the dialogue, or at the end of the conversation, the group or the two parties that are discussing would arrive with a consensus in regards to what they had discussed through the TALANOA, or through the discussion, or through the dialogue. So it's used in different forms, particularly in the Fijian context. And some of you, as you may have been aware, the TALANOA concept was used and was introduced in the previous COP meeting. And that concept remains, and it is very useful to see that as we are also preparing towards COP26, which is beginning in the next couple of days, and in most of the webinars and in most of the discussion that has happened prior to COP26 in the social forum, but also in other webinars and discussion, the TALANOA concept has been used. So in Fiji, it's called TALANOA. It could be formal, it could be informal. It's used in communities, for example, in local villages. And it's also a concept that is used when, for example, when community or when the village are meeting together. So the TALANOA is, the concept is used. But we have similar examples, we have similar concept that is used in other Pacific other countries and territories. So we have, very similar format of TALANOA, but the other different Pacific Island countries have their names and their meaning to it. And so that's very briefly about the TALANOA concept. And we have been, I have been sharing this concept briefly, and also in the previous climate social forum, I think in a couple last climate social forum where we have engaged in. And I think it really links very well with this track of partnership. So as just to share with you, in the Pacific, we usually mostly use the concept of partnership because we have a lot of partners and we have a lot of organizations that work in this region, particularly in the area of climate change, but also in disaster risk management. We have a lot of development partners, regional agencies, international agencies that are also supporting local actors, supporting national organizations, supporting national government, supporting national civil society organizations at the national level and also at the community level in terms of the work that is being undertaken in climate and also in disaster risk management. So we use partnership as a mechanism or as a concept to bring the different stakeholders together, to bring the different partners together, so we can enhance our collaboration, we can use a common approach, because at the end of the day, we are all working towards building the resilience of our communities. So to give an example, I'm part of the Pacific Resilience Partnership, which is a mechanism that exists in the Pacific, which is made up of of civil society organization, development partners, government representative, regional organizations that comes together to support and realize the work on resilience building in the Pacific. For example, we have the framework of resilient development in the Pacific, or it's usually been referred to as the FRDP. So the FRDP is sort of a document that integrates our approaches and our work in three key areas, which is in disaster risk management and climate action, low carbon development, and also on disaster preparedness, response and recovery. So these are the three broad areas, and it is all addressed through this framework, which is the FRDP, or the Framework of Resilient Development in the Pacific. So this framework provide guidance to all the different partners that works in the Pacific in the area of climate change, disaster risk management, preparedness, response, and recovery. So for example, we have a youth working group that falls under this governance of the Pacific Resilience Partnership, and we have representation from the different youth constituencies, the different youth sectors that works in the region, both from the intergovernmental side and also from the civil society sector. So together, using the concept of partnership, we make sure that we align our work to the framework, but also in terms of the work that we do on a daily basis in the area of climate change and also in disaster risk management. We make sure that we are all complementing one another, we are not duplicating activities, and that we are all contributing to building a resilient Pacific. So those are some examples on how we have been collaborating together, on how we have been working together, using the concept and the approach of building genuine partnership in the region. Because if we looked at it carefully, at the end of the day, we are all targeting the same community, we are all working towards the same beneficiary, we are all working towards the same goal, whether it's in climate change, disaster risk management, preparedness and response, because at the end of the day, we are all contributing to building resilient communities. So those are just some examples in terms of how how we have been using the concept of partnership to harness and to strengthen our work in climate action, particularly in this region, for example, and we would have similar concept in other small island developing states, for example, in the Caribbean, because of the vulnerabilities of the small islands. They are vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And also because most of these small islands, for example, in the Pacific, majority of our population, we have a very youthful population. We have a youth bulge. So we place an important emphasis on young people. So when it comes to climate action, the voices of young people is very important for us, for example, in the Pacific, and they bring a force for change, and they can also bring the voice of their local communities. And we have been achieving this and contributing this through the spirit of partnership by working together, collaborating together to make sure that we are contributing towards the common goal of building resilient communities. And also we have been using the TALANOA concept dialogue. We use it in different forums, in our different discussions, but also it's defined in many ways, like through dialogue, through conversation, and in many other forms that we have been using. So that just to briefly give us a brief overview of what TALANOA means, but most importantly on the concept of partnership and how we have been using it and why it is very important to build partnership, to strengthen partnership, particularly when we are working in the area of climate change. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Sevuloni. Thank you very much for giving us an overview of TALANOA, and very glad that you are here because, as I said, the TALANOA, we want to learn how to work with TALANOA because we think that, as you said, to overcome and to also adapt better to climate crisis and other crises is important to create cooperation and collaboration. I don't know if there are questions from the floor. I have one, actually. But first of all, I want to leave the space to the others. My question is, if you can explain a little bit the questions that, which are based the TALANOA, which is based the TALANOA dialogue. So I know that the TALANOA is like a process, and the process implies some guiding question for reaching the goal of the discussion and so on. And maybe you want to tell a little bit more about these questions.
Thank you, Dominic. Yeah. And yes, I can recall that we have used this concept in some of our previous forum, and I think in one of our previous social forum webinar, where we have initially had a plenary discussion, and then after the plenary discussion, we had then broke out or spread out into small groups where we had then were given or provided some key questions that guided our discussion and that had guided our dialogue, which has then enabled participants to generate ideas, generate discussion and conclusion that at the end of the discussion, key points and key suggestions and key ideas are gathered from the participants, which are then reflected back to the group. So that's one of the concepts that has been used, which Dominic has made reference to. For example, there's around 3 questions, which is usually provided during the breakout sessions or during the TALANOA discussion. And then at the end of the discussion, the outcomes are formulated, which are then reflected back at the end of the discussion, which then sort of provide a summary of the outcome of the key discussion from the dialogue or from the TALANOA. And I'm sure my colleagues, Dominic, will be able, or will also be able to sort of share with the group or with the audience what are those specific 3 questions are.
Yes, sure. I was referring on the where we are, where we want to go, and how do we get there. We also use them in some of our groups, yeah, I think that, as you said, these are very useful for like foster the discussion and guide the discussion further. I don't know if there are now questions from the floor to Sevuloni. I think that today we had a proper chance to learn this methodology that now we are applying also in Italy. We have also have some session in physical presence now in Italy based on the TALANOA. We are trying to foster this dialogue. But I don't know if there are questions also from the floor. If not, maybe Sevuloni, if you want to leave us a final statement for on your vision on how to foster partnership for climate change, and then we can move to the other session. And also invite you, Sevuloni, if you want to stay. And the next session will be very interesting because we'll deal with sociocracy. It is a methodology to reach groups and address common decision without just majority and minority, but with the methodology of consensus. So it's something that is also inside the TALANOA methodology. So if you want to finish your intervention with a final statement, the floor is to you.
Thank you so much, Dominic. Appreciated. Yeah, and just to conclude, I think as just to reinforce on some of the earlier statement mentioned, we believe that we've seen that partnership has worked. To share with you, we have seen it. It has worked in this region, particularly in the Pacific, and also particularly in the area of climate action. Because what we see is, we have a lot of organizations, we have a lot of constituencies that are working in this area. So only through partnership, by working together, by collaborating together, we can all, contribute towards achieving a common goal, particularly in climate action. And we have seen that it has worked for us in this region, and also particularly in the area of youth development. For example, we have a lot of youth constituencies, youth organizations that are very active in this region, particularly in climate action and also in disaster risk management, So in our experience, we have been able to improve, strengthen our work through a partnership by coming together, speaking to one another, making sure that we are all contributing in the different areas that we are working in, and that also allows us to achieve what we are aiming for at the end of the day. So I would like to leave it there, and I mean just to share some perspective on how we have seen partnership work for us, and how it can be used to strengthen and amplify our voice and our work towards climate action, and particularly in building resilience communities. Thank you.
Thanks to you. Thank you very much again for your contribution and your presence here to the Climate Social Forum.